Hello and welcome to another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm your host, Kyle Glaser, alongside former Padres center fielder Mike Cameron. Mike, position players have reported, full squad workouts are underway, spring training games begin next week. Baseball's in the air. It's an exciting time.
Most definitely. It's always a good time, when everyone shows up to spring training. Everyone's in good spirits. Everyone feels like they have a chance to win the World Series right out of the gate. Everyone is talking about their championship caliber ball club at the present time. And we all know that's not true, but the vibes are there for everyone to enjoy the excitement of what's new, what's to come, who's the hottest prospect to make a team, what guys are going to try to get back in the saddle to be better players this year than they were a year before, and all the good things that come along with it, with guys just trying to work some kinks out and getting ready to play, which I find very interesting right now, considering I feel like they only get like a couple of days to get ready to play games. And I was watching today, some of our guys throwing live BP and they're already like full tilt already. So I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I
hope
don't
and
know how they do it.
yeah, hope and optimism are certainly in the air, and we're going to go over all this top spring training storylines for the Padres now that the full squad is here. But Mike, you are in Arizona right now as a special advisor for the Mariners, doing some work. You're right there at the Peoria Sports Complex.
Yeah.
What for you is the best part of spring training? Whether it was as a player, as a coach, what for you stands out about spring training and the memories and just the best moments?
For the number one thing, Kyle, is everyone get a chance to Um, when you bring in new players, you also get a chance to set the tone for your team. You also the camaraderie, and we all know it's the start of something that happens for the next 6.5, 7 months. So it's always special for that particular point. And everybody, like I said before, everyone is in good spirits because it's zeros across the board. And maybe some of the younger guys maybe have a little bit of stress on them, trying to prove that they belong or trying to prove that they can make a team. But other than that, most guys know and understand that, your focus is to try to get ready to play a full season of 162 without getting injured and try to make it out of this with your mind in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Padres are one of those teams that has a lot of hope and optimism, as we've discussed. 93,
Yeah.
93 wins a year ago, took the Dodgers to 5 games in the NLDS. And a lot of folks really felt like the winner of that series was going to go on to win the World Series. Dave Roberts said as much during a speech I saw him give earlier this winter at USC. So there's no question the Padres are coming into this season with high expectations, even after losing Jurickson Profar, even after losing Ha-Seong Kim. In recent days, they've signed Nick Pivetta, they've signed Kyle Hart to lengthen that rotation. They brought in some veterans. We talked about Jason Hayward. They just agreed with Yuli Gurriel on a minor league deal. So there's some new faces, some old faces, still high expectations in San Diego. Mike, I want to
Mhm.
dive into the top storylines. And the number one thing for me that needs to be watched this spring training is how Xander Bogaerts looks at shortstop. The Padres have had a great defense, particularly infield defense in recent years, and Ha-Seong Kim was a huge part of that. He's now in Tampa Bay. Xander Bogaerts, when he first came over, was playing shortstop for the Padres and struggled so badly he had to move to second base. And even at
Yeah.
times last year, he didn't look great over there. He ended up moving back to short at the end of the season when Kim got injured. We're going to see if he can really be even just a league average defensive shortstop like he was in his previous years. That to me is going to be the number one thing to watch. As a veteran who played the middle of the diamond, what are some things that you look for out of maybe older guys who are still playing those premium positions to see if they still have it?
I think the number one thing is like when you've struggled and the talks of it kind of creeps in, you have to find a way to get your fundamentals down as much as possible for the lack of ability that you lose as you start to get older. You still have to continue to focus on your fundamentals. Hopefully Xander can kind of get comfortable this year at his position. Obviously, some of the analytic numbers may not be on his side, but you can't really focus on those things. You can kind of look at those as a veteran and understand, take what you can from it. But also, I think the number one thing is the focus on the fundamentals, and it always starts with the footwork at shortstop, and you work your way up.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned the footwork. I think the number one thing that was noticeable about Bogarts, even last year at second base, was he had really lost a lot of that lateral agility, that side to
Yeah.
side ability to get up the middle, especially to the backhand. I noticed it. It seems like at this point, like you said, the speed that you had at 22 just isn't going to come back at 32. But
No.
the quick first step, more efficient angles, pre-pitch positioning. It seems like the little thing is going to be more important than ever.
But definitely, I also think that with we talk about analytics and some of the fundamental things. Analytics now help you position yourself a lot better moving forward as your career progresses as a player, as you try to stay there as long as you possibly can. And so I think Xander knows this. I think that'll be his focus on this spring and showing and working on those things. His focus will be on some of the things that he doesn't do well and try to get better at to be efficient enough to remain at shortstop throughout this season. And I think it's very important if the Padres are going to contend that you do have to have someone who can get to the routine balls consistently. The tough plays may be out of his league right now, but at the same time, he has played shortstop in the past. He has a great history playing the position. It's just a matter of him being able to shore himself up so the team can have some success at that position.
Yeah, one thing that certainly helps, he has a great third baseman playing beside him in Manny Machado, who is fully
Yeah.
healthy. He has a very good second baseman beside him and Jake Cronenworth. So that'll potentially help some of the lateral agility issues. But you're right. Watching his fundamentals, seeing the footwork, seeing the angle, seeing the pre-pitch positioning, seeing the hands, just making sure he's consistently making the routine plays. That's going to be the number one thing for me, at least, to watch in camp. There is a big position battle going on behind the plate. Elias Diaz, former All-Star,
Yeah.
All-Star Game MVP, one of the most random and surprising All-Star Game MVPs in All-Star Game history. But he has that award on his shelf. Was signed. He came on at the very end of last year. The Padres re-signed him. He was the first big league free agent they signed this offseason. He's in camp alongside Luis Campusano, who for many years was considered the Padres catcher of the future, has shown flashes offensively, fell off last year and lost the job. Look, just to be frank, defensively, it's always been below average slash fringy, and he has always struggled with maturity, leadership, building relationships with pitchers, a lot of the intangibles you need behind the
Yeah.
plate. It's going to be a competition. Mike, you saw a lot of these position battles coming up as a player between a veteran and a younger guy. What are some of the things you looked for in a position battle and determining, hey, this is the guy who should win the job?
Well, when you're talking about catchers, catchers are basically the leaders of the defense and the leader of the pitching staff. So their focus is mainly on getting quality relationships and getting on the same page with the pitchers. Obviously, now the pitchers do a lot more calling their own game, with the pitch com and everything. So I think, now with once again, some of the analytics that come into play, what are you looking for? Are you looking for more offense from a position, or are you looking for a catcher who is suited enough to can handle the five starters or a couple of guys that are in competition at that position? And your number, your 1, 2, and 3. What is the relationship like with them? Has it been successful at all? And I think that it will come down into that particular part of it as far as who they decide to choose to be the leader behind the dish.
Yeah, those relationships, especially with the front of the rotation, are so, so, so critical. And Luis Campusano, as we've discussed, I've covered him since he was an A ball in Lake Elsinore, seen his rise. And look, he has the offensive potential. Last year, there were just way too many moving parts in his swing. It was
Yeah.
interesting. The rest of the Padres offense got much better at making contact. He regressed. I'd like to see him simplify his swing. At the same time, though, it does come down to building those relationships. Campusano's 26 now, and again, you've
Yeah.
seen so many good young players come and go.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of figures it out at different times. The concerns about him in terms of, again, maturity, leadership, building relationships with pitchers and teammates, they date back to the time he was 18, and they're still being talked about now. At what point do you expect young players to kind of have it figured out? And at what point do you say, maybe this just is who he is and it's not getting better?
Well, I feel like, Cal, there's always room for improvement as long as you're in the big leagues. You're constantly learning about yourself first and foremost, and then you're constantly learning about your teammates as long as you're there. You once you begin to figure some things out about yourself, it makes you comfortable in all areas of your game. It will probably make him comfortable in his leadership role. Guys are human, so they're looking to be the most successful that they possibly can. And most young catchers are constantly trying to improve their skill set for one. And then I think the number one thing is just like their attributes to being able to help a pitcher get through a game or help pitchers get through situations. So you definitely have to put in your time in that department and refine some of the little things that catchers do on a daily basis.
From your position center field, you had a bird's eye view of the catchers who were
Yes.
good at blocking, good at, throwing runners out, that were fundamentally sound. What did you want to see from a catcher when you were out there in center field and you were watching things unfold?
Well, I've played with some guys that has great arms. They're great defensive catchers. With one, I'm here teamed up with one, as I say, the manager of the Seattle Mariners, and Dan Wilson. He was able to do a lot of different things. I played with Jason Kendall, like his mind was like a Rolodex. He could remember things from a couple years on guys, on pitchers and everything. So, I played with Piazza. He was more of an offensive catcher. And then some of the older guys like Don Slaught, when back in my White Sox days, um, Eddie Thomasy and Jason LaRue in Cincinnati, and obviously playing in San Diego, Robbie Bowe and Piazza again, and then in Boston. I played with one of the greatest all time, El Capitan, and Jason Varitek. So I've got a chance to see numerous guys who have some of the great qualities. And if you can get, like a very solid base of offense out of the guys, but also the most important thing is always they take on the responsibilities of helping pitchers get through innings. I think that is the probably most important way to do it. But you know, the San Diego Padres have, very good top end starting pitching.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps a guy like Campusano get better with his rapport with those guys because they're going to basically call the game, and he's just there to make sure that he doesn't obstruct what they're trying to do, but also be in. He has to have some kind of conviction and understanding what he wants the pitcher to try to accomplish, and that's what. Like right now, they have everything on a card and a piece of paper that you can kind of go off of to get yourself through the customary type of game. I think Diaz, on the other hand, has the responsibility of just learning and understanding some of the pitchers now that he has with the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, no question. Again, I think this is the position battle that's going to be the one to watch. There are other position battles for some bench spots, and we'll get to the back of the rotation in a second. But look, if you want to compete, especially in the NL West with the Dodgers and Diamondbacks, you have to be strong
Yeah,
1 through 9 in the lineup. You can't have a catcher who's a black hole offensively, but you also need to make
yeah.
sure he's on the same page with his pitchers. So seeing who's able to win the job, and then if they're able to carry that success into the regular season, I think that's going to be one of the low key things that will help determine the Padres' success. Mike, we've talked about the front of the rotation. Look,
Yeah.
we know it's in good shape. You have Yu Darvish, you have Dylan Cease, you have Michael King, and now you have Nick Pivetta, who, again, even if he's just a solid league average number 4 type starter, that's all the Padres need him to be. But this being baseball in 2025, injuries happen. You run through
Yeah.
arms more than any other. I mean, it's kind of crazy how many arms teams run through. I remember looking back, actually, I believe it was the 2001 Mariners. Your team used
Yeah.
19 pitchers the whole season. Teams now
Yeah.
use 37, 38, 40. It's kind of crazy. The
Yeah.
the back of the rotation, they signed Kyle Hart, brought him back out of Korea. You have Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer. You have Randy Vasquez, who came over in the Juan Soto trade. It's really important to have a good number 5 starter. I mean, even number 6 starter nowadays. When you looked at the rotation guys, because like you said, you knew who your studs were, you knew who your horses and your aces were. But when you look for these guys, the back of the rotation, the guys trying to win a job, again, you had a bird's eye view from center field. What were the things that stand out to you about saying, hey, this is the guy who should be our number 5 starter versus this guy should be more of a depth starter?
Most of the time when you have, some of the back end guys, well, obviously Pavetta has a very um, large amount of experience and he's played in a very large market. So, he understands like some of the things that are that come across in the season. His number one thing is to, try to remain healthy, but also provide some a 170, 185 innings per se, give your team a chance. And then like some of the younger guys that they're just trying to um, game management, try to understand how to get through a big league lineup, a couple of times now, then more so than three times than when I played. Um, they're there to eat some innings up, but also you may get like some of these star talent in the back of the rotation, which is just like trying to mesh and learn from some of the veterans. Although because they're in a starting major league pitching staff on a starting major league pitching staff, they do have the talent to be able to get it done. It just makes your team that much better when you have that kind of depth. And you said only like six starters. Now teams have seven, eight starters lined up because of they constantly want to give guys some downtime just to
Yeah.
kind of like get their arms in shape.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a long season, and these guys are kind of max now, when they're pitching. So,
Oh yeah.
you can't run a Corvette every day. You got to pull them out every once in a while. So I think like some of these guys, once again, just trying to understand and learn how to manage a big league lineup and help your team with the innings that they need as you can continue to progress into the season.
I want to dial in on Matt Waldron a little bit. He won the number five starter job in camp last year, had a really good first half of the season. His ERA was
Yeah.
about 3.5 up through the All Star break. Then things fell off a cliff the end of the year. His ERA was over 9 the second half of the season. He's an interesting case because he's not a knuckleballer in the sense that it's the knuckleball and nothing else. He has a fastball, he has a breaking ball. It's kind of a short slider that he'll use, then he'll throw the knuckleball in there. But throughout his brief major league career, he's been his best the more he throws the knuckleball. And he's talked about that this spring, that he really wants to become more of a true knuckleballer as opposed to a pitcher with a knuckleball. Knuckleballers are kind of a dying breed, but you face some. Can you put in
Oh yeah.
perspective how difficult it is dealing with a knuckleballer?
Man, Ari Dickey was one of the toughest guys that I faced with the knuckleball because he threw it hard.
Yeah.
I played with Tim Wakefield for a couple of years, and Wakey was always he just wanted no movement on the ball. He wanted the ball no spin, no kind of rotation on the ball. He wanted the ball to do its own dancing up there. And he could throw for days, man. That guy had a rubber arm and throw knuckleballs every day out of the bullpen on a Saturday day game and then throw the next day in a night game. So like I've seen different types, but R.A. Dickey was one of the toughest one, man, because he had curveball. He had a decent fastball with it too. So, when you're facing a knuckleball, your mind says, I'm seeing something that I got to wait on and I got to be ready to hit. But when you have those other attributes to it, um, R.A. could pitch too, like, and the guy could hit a little bit too. So, he was tough, man, because he varied his knuckleball. He would throw hard sometimes. He would take a little bit off, and then he would rush your fastball by you. So when you're talking about and you're dealing with knuckleballers, it's just a comfort of to where they are and what they're trying to accomplish in their repertoire. But obviously, I think throwing a knuckleball in San Diego definitely would help his case a lot more because you got the marine layer out there and the ball doesn't travel very well,
Yeah.
especially at nighttime. So it always helps to have those type of things in your back pocket. But I still think that if you can get over those pitches, being the breaking ball and consistently throw the fastball a little bit to keep guys off balance. I mean, we all know that that's the key to pitching is just
Yeah.
trying to keep the hitters off balance and maybe off the barrel. So, hopefully that he can find his niche. We may see him the first game over here on Friday. So you never know. We may see, consider he's a knuckleball pitcher.
Yeah, no, and you're right. He does have that fastball he can, zip in there. And I think that's what the Padres and a lot of others would like to see from him is instead of, throwing his fastball and then mixing the knuckleball, throw your knuckleball and then mixing the fastball as your change of pace pitch. And I mean, you can speak to this when you're sitting on a knuckleball, the upper 70s, low 80s, sometimes even the low 70s. All of a sudden, that 91-mile-an-hour fastball comes in. 91 doesn't look like 91. It looks like 98, 99.
No, definitely it does. Especially guys that can throw it and throw it for strikes. The big league hitters try to eliminate pitches if a guy is not consistently getting things in the on or in the strike zone. So you want to try to make sure that you do the best you can to control your strike zone when you're dealing with a guy who has this specialty pitch in the knuckleball.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other contenders, Randy Vasquez and Kyle Hart. Kyle Hart's an interesting case. He's a player who really struggled in his brief major league stint with the Red Sox in 2020, went over to Korea and really reinvented himself. And we've seen a lot of players do this. They go over to Asia, they figure some things out, and they come back different and better players. Merrill Kelly with the Diamondbacks went to the KBO, came back. Now he's the number two starter, or was the number two
Yeah,
starter on a World Series team. Chris Flexen, who was with the Mariners, was a guy,
yeah,
struggled with the Mets, went to Korea, came back, was a solid starter for the Mariners for a few years, excuse me. And most recently, Eric Fetty was, a top prospect with the Nationals, just never could put it together in the majors, goes
yeah.
over to Korea, comes back, and he's a stud and a key trade deadline piece. You've seen in your career, guys you played with who, they go over to Asia, they figure some things out, and they come back different ball players. What for you did you always kind of, talk to those players, see from them, hear from them about, how does going over there help a player transform their game?
Well, I think, Kyle, in this situation, most of the time when guys go over is just to find themselves, find the confidence and the conviction in some of the things that they're trying to accomplish. And then you start to have success. And we all know that success builds confidence, and it also gives you a plan to how to maneuver in this particular area when you come back to the league. There obviously there's a much more of a length of offensive types in the big leagues than it is in Korea. But when you get a chance to go out and to display without the pressure of you looking over your shoulder, knowing you may go down if it's something that happened, you may get an option or whatever it is. They allow you to go through some things and figure out things. And once you're able to do that as a ball player, considering whether it be KBO or MLB or the Japanese league, when you get a chance to go and try to figure yourself out without having that stress of possibly being an option, it allows you to do the things that you are capable of doing. Because obviously, if you can pitch in the big leagues, it's just about the consistency in the big leagues more so than anything else, and the production as you need to continue to stay in a rotation or stay on in a lineup or just actually be on the team in itself. And most of these guys are kind of in their mid to late 20s, or whatever it may be, and then you gain this confidence and you bring it back and you understand what it takes for yourself to continue to put yourself in a position to maintain a rotation spot or a bullpen spot or just on the roster in itself.
Yeah, I remember talking to a couple players and a couple scouts, international scouts who are in the Pacific Rim. And one of the things they talk about is a lot of times pitchers that go over to Asia, they're taught to pitch backwards. They're able to,
Yeah,
to really focus on their secondaries and they just become more complete pitchers. So much of player development in the United States is focused on velocity, velocity, velocity. Going
yeah,
over there, they're able to become more complete pitchers. And as you said, do so without the stress of, man, if I have one bad outing, I'm going down to
yeah,
AAA. In
definitely.
terms of, you're in an interesting position because you've seen the game change. You're still involved in a coaching and a, front office kind of role. Do you feel like guys pitching backwards is an advantage now just because so many hitters are so geared up for high velocity all the time?
Definitely. I've seen that's probably the one of the most important things. You see guys that throw in 98, 90, 99 to 100 and some miles an hour, and they're spinning the ball like crazy now. And so when you're pitching backwards and you when you know a pitcher has that velocity, you're still going to be geared up to try to hit the fastball. And so that's why you see a lot of check swings. You see a lot of guys um, flinching a lot more because of that type of pitching. You know, I played in an era where if you threw that hard, you were probably in the back of the bullpen, unless you was an anomaly like a Pedro Martinez or Roger Clemens, um, um,
Randy
uh,
Johnson.
Randy Johnson. You know, the guy that I hate facing, even though he's through left-handed. But having those type of guys, you know, in this day and age, these guys see it so much. They not only see it in the major league level, they're seeing it at minor league level. They're seeing it all the way down to um all the way down to like just high school. Some of the guys are able to do throw these type of guys, but they're just probably more minimal guys like that, you know, in the amateur ball. But once you get in pro ball, you see it so much that you have to train for it over and over again. So I just think the reaction time, guys don't have the same reaction time as I did when I was playing. It was more about movement. It was more about being able to throw strikes with all of your pitches. You know, some of these guys now are in the big leagues and they're doing it with two pitches because of that velocity. You know, that margin of error with that velocity is still, you know, number one. But you also do have guys in the big leagues that can pitch. It just they're more refined with their secondary stuff.
Yeah, and I'll be really curious again. This applies to Matt Waldron too. Not a big velo guy, but he has the knuckleball. Kyle Hart, when he's right, it's 93, 94, which nowadays is average velocity for a lefty, which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy. But it's a good slider, and we'll just see how he's able to really take what he learned in Korea and apply it here in the U.S. And we'll see if these guys are able to win the job. Again, Randy Vasquez
Mhm.
is in the running too, but I'm going to have a keen eye on both Waldron and Hart to see if they're able to win the number 5 spot and see who emerges victorious. Mike, the
Yeah.
other big storyline in spring training that I think is super, super important is the health of Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. I think it's not controversial at all to say these are the two best players on the Padres and the two most important players on the Padres.
Mhm.
Machado was bothered with by tennis elbow really throughout the 2023 season, had surgery, and early last year was not right. Got off to a slow start, was DHing most of the time, wasn't ready to play third base the start of the year. It took him a little bit to kind of get back to normal. This year, he came out today. He says he's 100% healthy, had a full off season, which
Yeah.
again makes a big difference. And Fernando Tatis Jr., of course, we know one of the most talented players in baseball, but has never played a full season, with the exception of the shortened 2020 season. Number of injuries, as well as a suspension for performance enhancing drugs. Last year had a stress reaction in his femur and knocked him out for 2 months. Keeping these guys healthy and on the field for a full season is going to be so, so, so critical to the Padres' chances. When you looked at guys who are coming off, an injury, they're coming into spring training, or even your own experience, coming in sometimes to spring training, coming off an injury plague season, what are kind of the things that you want to see from guys, that you're looking, hey, I don't care if you hit well in spring training, I just want you to stay healthy.
Yeah. When you're talking about players like Machado and Tatis Jr., you know what they're capable of doing when they're healthy on a field. They're capable of carrying a team, maybe more so Tatis than Machado, the steady veteran that you know you're going to get quality production out of. So you know, knowing and seeing the health of these guys in being in great shape bodes well for the San Diego Padres, and it is probably not well for the rest of the NL West. But having guys of this nature, you know for a fact they're going to be very, very large contributors to pretty much your offense all season long. And you know that they're capable of doing, and you're just hoping that they get through spring training, you know, with not a lot of bumps and bruises or somewhere is going to keep them out for a very long particular time, which impacts your offense very significantly because these are two of the main um, pillars in your lineup. So and it's good for baseball when guys are healthy, you know, in the likes of Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis. I love the way Tatis plays. I didn't know if he's going to be able to play right field like he does. You know, we didn't know if he's going to be center field, but obviously he's taken out well. I mean, the guys want to go glove out there, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And he's special. He's a special talent. And so, being able to get for San Diego, the Padre fans to get a chance to see these guys on a daily basis definitely is a good sign, and it will bring a lot of very good bright days in San Diego.
When you were playing, what was sort of the ramp up period for you where you felt like, okay, I want to be X percent when I report to camp, X percent halfway through? What was the kind of the process for you to be where you needed to be on opening day?
Well, it just really depends on getting at bats and feeling comfortable, with that. The body in itself is constantly training itself to go, the first time a couple of at bats and maybe 4 or 5 innings, for some guys. For me playing center field, I wanted to make sure that my legs were 100% ready to go within 2 weeks of the season starting. You don't try to, definitely as I got older, I tried to be more cognizant of getting more at bats and hopefully getting myself in a lot better shape as it takes a little bit longer. But now guys are coming now ready to go, man, for the most part. They just haven't been standing around, sitting in the dugout, going and having the at bats. And really training your eyes and getting comfortable with with having some success at the plate so you don't become a mental block as you start to enter into the season.
As a hitter, when should you pay attention? As an observer, when should you pay
Yeah.
attention to your performance in spring training? When does it actually matter? Okay, he's starting to look like he's squaring balls up. Is it just the final few weeks of spring training? When do you need to see a guy start performing before, it means something?
Yeah, typically, kind of, for veteran guys, they're kind of at their own pace in itself. No one wants to embarrass themselves. You want to have quality at bats as much as you possibly can. And obviously, um, you know, probably in about um, eh, when you're about 10, 15 games in, most of the veteran guys are still getting two, possibly three at bats. So you're starting to see guys kind of heat up here in the middle of spring training. But like I said before, with spring training starting early and guys knowing that some of these guys are ready to come out of the shoot, man. You
Yeah.
just had to pace them, in this particular time. I came up in an era where it was more like you use spring training to get ready for the season. Now guys are using spring training to be ready to go, probably the second week into spring training. And a lot of that has to do with the type of pitching that's been involved in it. Guys are, kind of full tilt. I'm interested to see what it looks like on Friday, guys coming out of the gate. More spring training is definitely more for the pitchers
Yeah.
to getting their arms in shape. But as a position player, you're really just trying to get your body used to it and get yourself in the type of shape that it needs to be in.
Yeah, spring training being 6 weeks long, I think everyone except pitchers probably thinks it's a little long. As a position player, what do you feel like would be the optimal length of spring training?
I never had a problem with spring training, like I just, I like to play baseball. And, like it does get a little bit long that last, 7, 8 days. When you have a situation like the Dodgers and the Padres are going to, when you got to go out of the country and come back and start over spring training, when your rhythm is thrown off, your routines are thrown off, that's when it gets very boring, very monotonous when you've already ramped up and played real games, and then you got to bring it back down
Yeah.
to a level of in spring training mode. Nobody wants to do that at all. But I understand it's for the good of the game. But for most teams, everyone and most guys, you'll see like these guys that are trying to make the team, they're ready to go right now. Like they're ready to go out and put their talent in motion to show teams that they're able to play. And I always said that, most people don't really make, the team in spring training, like a lot of people don't place value in it because they understand that most veterans are trying to get ready for the season, while the other guys are trying to show that they're capable of playing at this particular level. So, those last couple of weeks though, guys are dialed in and trying to make sure that they're ready to go for the season and making sure they're healthy, more importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, these are the top storylines for the Padres. Looking at again catching situation, Xander Bogaerts at shortstop, who wins the number 5 starter job, and keeping Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis healthy and ready to go for the year. Mike, there is one new development that's taken place here. As I mentioned earlier on the show, the Padres
Mhm.
signed Yuli Gurriel, decorated
Yeah.
veteran, World Series champion, to a minor league deal, essentially to be their right-handed hitting first base complement. Potentially, when Luis Arias needs a day off, he can fill in as a DH primarily as well. But where this is particularly interesting for the Padres is obviously Yu Darvish is their top starter. And you'll remember
Yeah.
back during the 2017 World Series, I was there covering it for Baseball America. Yuli Gurriel, stretched his eyes out and in a mocking way toward Yu Darvish, created a lot of consternation. Now, potentially, they are teammates. General manager AJ Preller has said that he spoke to Yu Darvish before they brought Gurriel in. Was there a player or certain group of players that maybe I don't know you didn't get along with, or some of your teammates didn't get along with, and all of a sudden y'all are teammates, or maybe something happened? What's that
Yeah.
dynamic like when there's guys maybe where something happened, now you find yourselves teammates, and what's that
Yeah.
process of working through that?
Because you said this, Kyle, I never had a problem with no teammates, man. Like you never know who's going to be on your team. Obviously, you're competing between the lines. Everyone understands that. And sometimes tempers flare, get high, or whatever it may be, because you're competing. These are grown men. I'm pretty sure if you Darvish had a problem with Gurriel right now, they've already kind of squashed it, worked it out, and put it behind them because it is the past. This is about now, this particular moment with the team, and they should be ready to mesh together because they're going into battle together now. And I think you Darvish respects Gurriel's track record as to who he is, and I'm pretty sure Gurriel respects you Darvish's track record and what he is. And you're trying to get prepared for a Major League Baseball season. So those type of things, that you can kind of put that behind you because once again, the thing that they have a problem with happened in game. So they were competing. So I'm pretty sure that, everything will be squashed with the help of Kriller or whomever it may be to put things in perspective and understand what is the task at hand. And that's getting prepared for the 2025 championship baseball season.
Yeah, as you mentioned, veteran players, letting bygones be bygones, and like you said, pulling toward the same outcome. I think there's no question. Sometimes people on the outside can put more stock in some things than people on the inside who just say, "Hey, it happened. Let's move on. Let's move forward." And now we got to try and win ball games together. Mike, before we wrap up, I do have to bring
Yes.
something up with you. I was on with Heath Bell last week, and he was telling a story about how you guys were shooting hoops. You, Chris Young, a couple of guys, and he said that he was draining pretty smoothly, and you had an off day. So I got to ask, how was your basketball game? He made it seem like he expected more from you.
Maybe so. I mean, maybe so. Look, I'm not at my best at all things at all times, and Bell maybe had a pretty good day. I mean, we know he's definitely a wide body guy that likes to bang, and I'm not trying to bang around with Big Heath Bell, but Chris Young, and with him being 6'7", so I mean that may have been I may have had an off day prematurely or whatever it may have been because most times you shoot basketball early in the morning. So, but if Heath Bell wants to get ready to suit up right now, I'm here. Tell him to bring his butt to Arizona, and we'll show up at one of AJ Priller's 5 a.m. basketball camps and run up and down the court like that. I don't know what I'm gonna feel like the next day, but I'll just understand that if Heath Bell's in town and we need to go bang this thing out, we can get it done.
All right, the gloves are dropped. Let's go. I love it. I love it. We got it. We got a beef here on Friar territory. Now we'll get you and Heath on together, and I would certainly love to see that. Mike, spring training is this time of it's a lot of fun. It's camaraderie. It's team building. We all know guys.
Yeah,
After they're done playing, middle of the game, sometimes they'll peace out, go to the golf course.
yeah.
What are your best memories of spring training? Like, what stands out to you when you think about spring and all the camps you were in, both as a minor leaguer and a big leaguer?
Well, a lot of times, spring training, you get a chance to have your family more involved. The kids get a chance to spend more time with you. I mean, for out here in Arizona, it's definitely, the weather's great. So people are getting out of those cold states and get a chance to come into some sun, seeing some baseball. It's always a good time. It's a good vibe. especially here in Arizona, where what is it, 18 of the 30 some teams that are out here, if I'm not mistaken, and you can get to them all within an hour and a half, no more than an hour, just depending on what kind of traffic is going on. So it's always a good time in that nature, and you try to make sure that you're enjoying yourself in that realm, but also making sure that you're getting prepared for the season and understand what's going on. And I just try to stay out of trouble and stay healthy and making sure and enjoy the golf, because once the season starts, you won't be able to golf as much as you would like to, as you got a chance to do in spring training, where when you're coming out of games and you get a chance to have a few hours of sun left out here in AZ to go out and try to um, master your clubs on some of these nice golf courses out here. And like now these guys have more off days too, so it makes it a whole lot better, going in there. And you get a chance to also having all of the teams in the same area, per se, Arizona, the central location of it, you see more of the guys on the other team that you're friends with or whatever it may be. So you get a chance to experience some different things. You have some nice events going on out here, where some charity events. So you may meet up with some guys on other teams and you're involved in that nature. So Top Golf, the new Tiger Woods deal out here. I'm a big component of going and shoot basketball at Dave and Buster's. So I enjoy the big grown up arcade stuff and some of the new things they got going on in Arizona. So it's always interesting to see some of these things that take place.
Gotta ask, who's the best golfer of all your teammates, all the guys you played with? Who's the best golfer?
Wow. Wow. That's a good one. Brett Boone was really solid. For some reason, the guy he uses regular two baseball batting gloves while he played golf. Um, obviously playing with Tom Glavine, those guys are really good. Playing with Maddox, another good one. Let's see. Everybody else, trying to think, all teams, all teams.
Would
Let's
you
see.
frequently play with guys on other teams, or would it just mostly be guys on your team?
Mostly the guys on your team, you may get a chance to meet up with someone else on other squads. Um, and when you get a chance to do that, hey, I did have a teammate one time by the name of Michael Jordan. He can hit the golf ball a little bit too. So, and that's when I was really much younger and much more um, green per se, as my golf game was trying to mature into a better golfer. So, but there are some good guys. I mean, we got some guys over here that can hit the golf ball over here too. We got a coach by the name of Ryan Scott. Played with him yesterday. Man, the guy just lit up Wigwam. The guy started out with five birdies, five birdies and an eagle to start the thing off, and it was myself and Gutierrez trying to figure out, because we haven't played golf in a couple of weeks. So I got a chance to play a little bit today, and I was much better than I was yesterday, because we didn't have um, Ryan out there blasting balls all over the place, and so we could actually play a little bit of much calmer game, with myself and Gutierrez and Eric Ferris. So it's always good to be able to get a chance to do this. And when we have off days, sometimes we'll have team outings where you got 5 or 6 groups that go out to some of the nicer golf courses, when you have some of the tee times that you can get early in the morning and enjoy the round in itself.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't think about that until you mentioned it. But yeah, you were a White Sox minor leaguer at the same time Michael Jordan
Yeah,
was. What are your memories of playing with him, spring training, and then also,
man.
of baseball and golf?
Man, the one thing I remember the most, Kyle, is this guy talks so much junk. He he competes in everything. He competes in just shooting notebook ball paper in the trash can. It could be anything. He was a gambler per se, and he had the most confidence in all the time. And getting a chance to play with Jordan, you got a chance to see how uh, difficult the game is, how graceful. You have to be with people. But the fact that he was able to do this at 32, 33 years old and just show up and hit 200 in double A, you knew the work that he put in. Like, we knew the guy, he would be the first one to show up at the camp every morning, in the hitting part, working on his game. absorbing as much as he can. But that baseball, man, you gotta have a tight your game has to be tight in a sense that where you gotta have to create some of the bat speed. And MJ was a much longer guy or whatever. So he didn't have like some of the baseball muscles that you need to do the thing, but somehow I know that he got it done. And he could run too. Like I didn't think that, the guy 6 foot when you see him on TV run up and down the best 90 feet or whatever it may be, you wouldn't think that translated on a baseball field, but it definitely translated for him to be able to show that. And I'm forever grateful to get a chance to play with a guy like that because, we just watched him work, bounced a lot of questions off of him because we were at the time we were talking about the greatest basketball player that we know as my GOAT per se. I mean, I know a lot right now. A lot of guys is either Kobe or LeBron, but that's the guy that I know and saw do it on a daily basis. And he brought some of those same um, thoughts and mentalities out on the baseball field. And but the number one thing they did, he gonna talk a whole lot of junk. It don't matter who it is, and most of the time he backed it up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean,
Uh,
you were 20, 21 at this time. Were
yeah,
you awestruck walking in the clubhouse and there's Michael Jordan?
man. When he signed, I was just like, "What?" And he coming to the White Sox? Man, what's going on? I gotta check this out. It was just cool to be around a guy who's so down to earth, like, coming into a whole different environment and lending yourself or basically putting yourself out there, knowing that this is probably the most challenging sport in a sense, because it's just you. You got to try to improve you to go against this ball that's coming at you at various speeds and it's bending, breaking, and it's doing different things. And then on top of that, just understanding, what you're capable to do as a player. So I always say baseball is a forever learning, training, shaping on a daily basis. That's why you play the game every day because you have to be able to um, deal with failure as much as you possibly can and come back the next day, even if you had your worst day the day before. You get a chance to come back and do it again. So it builds a lot of character in you right away when you're just standing in that 60 foot 6 inches away from a pitcher and you're trying to show that you're talented enough to be able to hit what they're throwing on a day, on a consistent basis, on a daily basis too.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not easy. One final MJ question before we wrap up. Did you
Yeah.
ever, were you ever in the outfield with him at the same time and had to make sure, oh man, I can't collide with Michael Jordan. I mean, were you ever out there with him at the same time?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We had some times we were out on the field at the same time. It was very easy, like the guy was like a giraffe out in the outfield per se, like take big long strides, obviously could jump very high. So, knowing that, knowing what the skill set I possessed at that time as I was still learning and gaining knowledge and trying to perfect my craft in the game. Uh, just seeing some of the things that he did. He was my stretch partner. We threw a lot. So to be able to experience that with him, man, I'll never ever forget those type of times. And considering at the young age I was, when I tell people this, like, oh man, you got a chance to play with MJ? Yeah, in baseball. We know what kind of basketball guy he was. We played with MJ in baseball. The guy hit 200 in two something 203 or something in double A. Nobody shows up at 33 years old and go to double A and hit 200. It just didn't happen. It just shows what kind of talent he was. Um, his dad was a lover of baseball. That was his first love in the game of baseball. So for him to get a chance to experience that, I'm sure it made him a little bit more hungrier when he went back to basketball, and it gave him an appreciation for another professional sport that most guys don't get a chance to do.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that. Well, Mike, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your insight and analysis. We appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you again next week after spring training games have gotten underway.
Definitely, Kyle. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. That'll do it for another edition of Friar Territory. Go ahead and subscribe, give us a like, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. For Kyle Glaser, I'm Mike Cameron. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.